Welcome back, guys. My name is Shayda Campbell and this is an 11th apartment video. So today's topic is watercolor pencil crayons. This is an excellent medium. There's a lot of reasons to try it out. First of all, watercolor pencil crayons are pretty inexpensive, so they're fun to try and to get into. And for anyone who feels like when you're holding that paintbrush, like you just don't have quite enough control, watercolor pencil crayon will give you the look and feel of watercolor with the familiarity of pencil crayon. So they're great for dipping your toes into the whole world of watercolor and watercolor paper and everything that art entails. So let's get started. Okay, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you two different ways that you can use watercolor pencil crayons to effectively illustrate your drawings and your hand lettering. So to begin, I'll go over my supplies. Today I'm using Staedtler watercolor pencil crayons. I have a package of 12. You can see them here. It's a good range of colors. This is what they look like. They look pretty much just like a regular pencil crayon. I would recommend actually getting a package of 24. I don't have quite enough color in my pack of 12, like I don't even have a purple. And I will link to that Amazon listing in the video description. So you can find that below. Okay, so that's the pencil crayons themselves, the watercolor pencil crayons. And so you'll also need a few dollar store paintbrushes. Just get some synthetic, simple little tiny brushes like this. And finally, the paper that I'm using is Strathmore watercolor paper. I have 9 by 12 sheets here. They are a cold press, and they're 140 pound. And the paper weight just refers to the density of the paper, the density and the weight of the paper. So a 20-pound paper is like computer paper, 140 pound and beyond is a nice thick cardstock or watercolor paper. Anything that is 140 pound watercolor paper and up, you probably don't need to stretch and we stretch watercolor paper to keep it from buckling when we add water to it. Now, just in case you do want to stretch your paper, I'm going to throw up a video all about stretching watercolor paper so that if you have thin paper or if you just want to practice stretching your paper for when you do actual watercolors, you can find that on my channel. But for today, we're not going to stretch the paper because we simply don't need to. We're not going to be adding that much water. So to begin, what I've done here is I've transferred my little illustration. I've got a little illustration of mushrooms onto my watercolor paper. If you don't know how to transfer your sketch, go back and watch my video about handmade Christmas cards, handmade holiday greeting cards. And in that one, I go over how you use graphite transfer paper to take a sketch and put the finished copy onto the paper that you actually want to work with. So basically your good copy. What I'm going to do with this one, guys, is I'm going to color it in using watercolor pencil crayons. We're going to get a nice shading, a beautiful color, and then I'm going to go over these lines with a black artist pen so we get this really nice graphic image, a great illustration. You'll have sort of a contour drawing that's colored in. So it really gives you a lot of punch and it'll look really good in the end. So to begin with the pencil crayons, I just use them exactly as a regular pencil crayon. And I would say the only difference that I would point out is that you probably don't need to lay down as much color as you would if you were just coloring in with pencil crayon, because the color is all going to sort of bleed and move when you add water, when it basically turns into a paint. So you probably don't need quite as much on there. And what I'm doing with the shading of the grass here, this is a good shading technique. I'm doing kind of a hard line up at the top, and then I'm just shading away from that. So just blending away, and this just comes with practice, and it's all just about how hard you apply your pencil to that paper. Just kind of blending out and blending away to allow our illustration to kind of fade off naturally. So I'm going to color in this mushroom in sort of a cherry red color. This will give us a chance to discuss a little more how you use these pencil crayons to shade. So what I'm doing here is I'm just laying down a good amount of color. And what I can't stress enough is that for your drawings and illustrations to look professional, do not underestimate the importance of white or the importance of the naked page. You know, children color in the whole mushroom. What the artist or the grown-up is going to do is you're just going to leave a little bit white. And I do this with all my shading, whether it's marker or pencil crayon or paint. It's a good idea not to color in everything. Leaving that negative space is the mark of a more refined artist or illustrator. You can shade just about any which way you want or color any which way you want. I'm kind of doing scribbly lines, just getting that color onto the page. Making sure to leave lots of white, lots of negative space. And with these pencil crayons, you can press a little harder to get that really true color that they give. Here I'm getting a nice orangey color from this peach pencil. And then of course you can go a little softer. And that'll really come through when you paint. I've drawn a few gills on the underside of this mushroom's cap, and you can see when I'm shading them, I'm not going to go black all the way up each gill because I'll be able to take the color up to the sort of the end of the gill when I have the color on my paintbrush. So again, just negative space, leaving some white so that I have some area to work with once the paint is on my brush. I'm going to come back in here and add a little bit of dark green to the grass, just doing a bit of line shading, and that will help to give it a little more depth and texture. So I've laid down all my color, and now it's time to paint. This is my favorite part. I love this. It's so rewarding. You've already sort of done all your shading, and now you sort of just get to move the paint around and sort of see what it does and see how things go. So I've got a nice clean jar of water and some paper towel to dab my brush on. And we just add a bit of water, and it's amazing. You really do see this pencil transform into paint. That is so cool. And if you find you've got a little too much color on your brush, that is that things are getting a little too dark, you can just wipe it off, get some fresh water, and continue. When we add water to our red mushroom here, we want to make sure that the color basically just doesn't get away from us. I don't want the whole thing to end up one solid shade of red. Then it's not really shaded, it's just this flat color, which is fine, like I said before, if that's what you're going for, but that's not what I'm really going for. So we're going to get rid of a little bit of that ink. And now see how that I wipe my brush. I can keep this in control, and I can make sure the paint doesn't get too heavy. And I'm able to keep, I'm able to highlight, to have highlights and to have light in my picture. 'Cause if there's one thing you want in a drawing or an illustration, it's light. So much of art is about light and capturing light and having these lively, bright pictures. So there we go. And with a clean brush, I'm going to go and just work the shading on the stem of the mushroom. Already I can see there's probably a little too much shading, so I'll just keep cleaning off my brush, making sure that that black doesn't get away from me. All right, so our little illustration is totally dry. It doesn't take super long to dry. As I said, you're not using a ton of water on there. You can see the picture hasn't buckled. It has curled ever so slightly, but that's nothing that a heavy book won't fix. So yeah, I've given it about half an hour. I probably didn't even need that much, but I don't want to risk there being one little wet spot and me going over with the Sharpie. So that is what we're doing now. Now that we've got the illustration transferred, we've colored it in, we've added the paint, or we've added the water to turn the pencil crayon into paint. And this is my favorite part. I just go over and all these lines that are left, or that you can still see from the original transfer, I just go over them. And this is really, I feel, where this type of illustration comes alive. Having that sort of faded paint as your color, and then having this strong contour drawing over top, I just think that's a very sort of effective illustration technique. And you can sort of go over as much or as little as you want with the black Sharpie or artist's marker. For example, you could probably leave the grass without that graphic black line, but I want as much of that as I can possibly get. As I said, I really like it. Like that look. Just looks so cool. And you can also add a little bit of shading with your marker. These little puffball mushrooms here are going to get some line shading. And so is the stem of this mushroom. Feel free to add extra lines or put in a little extra definition anywhere that you think the drawing needs it. And the only place you don't want to add any line is where you've faded away. So I wouldn't be putting any Sharpie along the bottom of the grass, or if I had done a sky, I wouldn't be adding any Sharpie to that. And that's all an illustrator's decision as well. So you're going to do whatever works for you and the way you see the drawing. Okay, so for the second example today, I'm going to be showing you how to use the watercolor pencil crayons without that contour drawing. Now this one, we're not going to have the initial lines, so we're not going to transfer with the sketch with graphite paper, and we're not going to have the final, the Sharpie lines. This is all about the watercolor pencil crayon. So what I'm doing is a flower wreath, and I've just traced over a plate and got a perfect circle, and then I've just sketched leaves and flowers all around here, and I'm going to leave a little opening in my wreath. I just love the way that looks. What I'm doing is I'm kind of erasing as I go, so getting rid of some of those sketch lines, and then just filling in really nice and light with the pencil crayon. And I've also worked within a specific color palette. So for this one, I've chosen to work with peaches and blues. And of course, blue and orange are across from each other on the color wheel. So they are complementary colors. So that's always kind of an easy way to do your color palette. And I've just toned it down. So instead of going with that intense blue and orange, I've kind of gone with a light blue and peach. Just erase. Get rid of those pencil lines, color it in. Okay, so that's my little flower wreath. I'm going to be working the exact same way. Just get a simple little synthetic brush, some paper towel for dabbing, and we're going to add our water. Got my water here, and I'm just going to start with the leaves and start adding lots of water to the page. You need quite a bit of liquid, of water, to get the paint moving. And when you're painting, just have fun with the paint, and don't be afraid, I guess, of how the paint will move on the page and how the water will move. It's amazing what the paper will do for you. The paper, watercolor paper, with its incredible texture, it practically paints the painting for you. It's so cool just to sort of have a splotch of paint and just see where it goes and see how it ends up as it dries. And you'll see what I mean when you start doing this. It is so cool what the paper and the water will do. And you don't need to I don't want to say you don't need to do anything, but it's just pretty cool. It does a lot for you, and learning to go with the flow of what's happening on the page will benefit you, especially as you're starting out. What I've done with these leaves to give them depth is I've colored in one side with my dark green pencil crayon and the other side with the light green. And then I'm just going to sort of blend them a little now that the water's on the page. Okay, my top 2 rules when you're working with watercolor. First of all, let that paint do what it wants. Do not overwork it. Do not overwork your paint. You want to be in control of your medium, but at the same time, you kind of want to let that water go where it wants, and you want to work with it. Okay, so number 1, don't overwork your medium. And number 2, just leave lots of negative space. Let that light in, let those highlights become a major part of your painting. And if you follow those two simple rules, you are going to look like a pro in no time. And if you're going along painting, and you kind of forget to leave that light space, it is possible to go back in and kind of erase. So I'll show you. Go in with a brush without any excess water on it, and you're just kind of going to soak up the water that's there. There we go. So that's sort of how you'd erase. Now you can only do so much of that, but for anywhere where you wanted a little highlight and you forgot, that's a good little trick to have. All right, let's just finish this up, and then I'm going to show you how to use this technique to do a little hand lettering. All right, now for my last trick. Just kidding. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you is how effective this medium can be when used to do your hand lettering. So what I'm doing here is, now that I have my pretty little wreath all finished, I'm gonna put a 2016 in here. Of course, you could write anything. You could do happy birthday or someone's name. I happen to think this would be a really pretty calendar. So if you just had this as your main piece and then your pages of the month down below, that would be kind of cool. So yeah, so that's why I'm going to do the 2016. So what I've done to prep is I have measured, it's exactly a 6-inch circle. So I just sort of centered that, got it where I wanted it, did it in a very light pencil. And now I'm going to go over my lines with a black watercolor pencil crayon. Just going really lightly to start. There we go. I want to do really thin, delicate, and we're going to go again as usual for a nice fake calligraphy. So I'm going to thicken on the downstroke, but I want to keep it really thin. I'm just going to add a little weight in here and just shading it in lightly. Okay, there we've got all of our black, and I've just sort of very carefully gotten rid of any extra pencil lines that were left on my from my initial sketch. And as usual, I'm just going to get a little bit of water on here, starting without too much. Don't want to have it getting away from me. And I'm just going to follow what I've shaded in and using those same techniques, just letting the paint sort of do what it wants a little bit, not overworking it. My camera cut out right at the end of that clip, but I'm pretty sure you guys get the point, and I hope you'll give watercolor pencils a try.